Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the 19th episode of Attlas Live. Tonight, as we await people to shuffle in, we're going to be tackling a subject which has great consequence for us and for others on the path. This subject, this issue, is one which saturates and pervades not just the internet, but the whole world. It is the conflation, confusion, and contention around what spirituality is, what constitutes spirit, spiritual studies, spiritual practice. What is it worthwhile to spend our time and energy and effort studying in depth, learning, indeed practicing? This topic came to us, as most of the topics which we discuss do, serendipitously. An individual shared with us a video, which, if you are here because you follow us on Facebook, then you got the gist of what the situation was. This individual was excited about the content of this video and wanted to share it with us. And less than 5 minutes into the video, we were completely astounded by the sheer ignorance of the speaker of the video, proclaiming himself to be a purveyor of great wisdom, not least the fact that this video was a part of a conference, Wisdom Con, we believe was what they were calling it. It was an hour-long presentation about DNA, about ancestral connections, about the relationship between ancestry and vibration and frequency and our innermost being. So one might ask, and the individual who shared this video with us, because he wanted to hear our thoughts, our feedback on the video. And we shared it. And he said, but haven't you received information in meditation about the nature of reality and the nature of the creation of reality and how it unfolds? And indeed we have. But in order to illustrate the problem that was being exhibited in this particular video, and indeed much of what passes for spirituality these days, we would like to offer all of you the intellectuals would call this a thought experiment. We do not like the word thought experiment. Experiment, yes, but it's an experiment of self-evident experiential knowledge. It's a consciousness experiment. It's an experiment of conscious imagination, not thought. We are not going to think our way through what follows. What follows is what we promised we would deliver this evening. Practical case studies, practical, meaningful examples, practices, useful, practical, applicable, applied, self-evident experiential knowledge, that which you can use. What's more, that which you arrive at, not because of something we told you, which you received in the mind, which you now will believe, but rather something which we've shown and allowed you to engage with in an experiential way to arrive at your own self-evident experiential knowledge of the facts. Because at the end of the day, to experience, to have wisdom, wisdom is knowledge from experience. Gnosis is experiential knowledge. We talk about self-evident experiential knowledge, that which we seek on the path. So let us function and operate in that space. And to illustrate and demonstrate the issues that we will be confronting this evening together, we would like to share with you the following image. And we wish to use this image as a foundation and a backdrop to discuss and explore the in-depth nature and process of the rose, of how the rose becomes, how the rose comes into bloom, comes into being, that which is its greatest expression of itself, how the rose self-realizes in order to express its beauty, to express its fragrance, to fill the lives of everyone who comes into contact, into engagement, into experience of the rose, fills them with joy and love and warms their heart. Because the rose has a metaphysical nature. It has a physical nature, of course, the scent, the colors, or at least we experience them on a physical level. That color, of course, being light, and that, of course, being energy. So in order to begin this analysis of the beauty and the truth of the rose, and the power that it has, and the meaning that it has, and the purpose that it has for being, let us discuss the history of vases. Now, vases go way back into antiquity, and typically a vase is made of some form of earthenware, although that earthenware is either crafted by hands, usually some form of clay that's been thrown on the wheel and spun into a shape, shaped and formed by the hands of a skilled potter. Afterwards, that clay, that raw clay, is then fired in an oven to dry it out and to crystallize the clay into a hardened form, which can then be decorated in all sorts of ways, or very plainly, very subtly glazed and then refired to harden the finish. And the history of vases go all the way back. Vases have played a pinnacle role in all civilizations in ancient times, right up until the present day. These vessels are examples of evolutionary styles of art and craft as they apply to the specific realm of pottery. But the vase as a vessel for not just roses, but all other flowers, has been the necessary vessel and vehicle with which flowers, and in our case, the rose in particular, has been able to be present within homes, within various different dwellings, buildings, and so that the flowers may express their beauty and fill the rooms with their scent, with their color, with the wonder, with the joy, bringing a little bit of life to what would otherwise perhaps be cold, dreary, dark, lifeless spaces. So when we consider the truth and nature of the rose, we begin by exploring all of the ancestral legacies related to the vase and the style in which the vase was formed, the patterns and shapes, the shape that it has taken, the specific type of clay or earthenware that the vase has taken, has the potter that the potter chose for that specific vase, for that specific room. And indeed, later, the flower arranger who selected that particular vase, because the vase had to be created, of course, but the potter didn't necessarily know for what specific purpose the vase was going to be used. Perhaps it would be used for daffodils. Perhaps it would be used for irises. Who knows? The flower arranger is the one who selected that particular vase for that particular room to hold that particular rose or dozen roses or half dozen roses, whatever the case may be. So, but as the potter begins his work of shaping and forming the vessel, he chooses a form of clay, of earthenware, and he throws it on the wheel, and he uses water, and he mixes water with the clay to soften it, and he begins working with it. And if you've seen potters work on the wheel, you know the process, and that process has evolved over many years and many different civilizations. Many potters have added their own ingenuity and craftsmanship to the craft itself, so that the ancestral legacy of pottery and vase making is one which stretches back for millennia. And as we dive deeper into the connections between those ancestral links and the self-realization of the rose, we can see many different styles and many different artistic expressions and cultural expressions and historical expressions revealing themselves in those vessels themselves as they have evolved and existed throughout the ages. Because as we all know, pottery is rather fragile. In some ways, some pots, they survive, and we have examples of historical vessels which go back millennia. And yet the vast majority of such vessels end up breaking. And we know this because vases are inherently fragile. Pottery is inherently fragile. If you drop it, it will break. That's almost a certainty because of the nature of the material that it's made from. So we're going to pause one moment here. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Does anybody see anything wrong or anything erroneous or dubious about our discussion here about the process by which a rose achieves self-realization, the process by which a rose comes to bloom? Does anybody not recognize or anybody see anything, any difficulty or any problem with the course that we have taken in our examination here, please share it in the comments if you do. Because we are going to continue to keep talking about pottery and vases. Having promised to talk about the process by which a rose comes to bloom and achieves self-realization, we are going to focus on the ancestral legacy of the vase, how it came into being, the form and structure that it takes, the materials by which it is created. We are going to wait until someone in the chat tells us what is wrong with our approach here and now, proclaiming and professing to you that we are going to share with you the process of the self-realization of a rose, and proceeding with that process to talk about the nature, purpose, legacy, and ancestry of vases. Understanding that in the backdrop, we have roses in a vase. Surely someone recognizes the issue at hand here. And we're going to wait until someone does, until someone shares it in the chat, in the comments. In the meantime, we love our earthenware. Earthenware is to us one of the most beautiful and remarkable of crafts and artistry. We, as you probably know by now, we lived in Japan, and Japan is known for its earthenware. There is just a way that the Japanese work with earthenware whereby the end result at times feels like you are holding something that was hewn out of the rock itself. It's living stone. It really is living stone. You feel as though and this comes from the tradition of the Japanese and their relationship to nature, their Shinto spiritual background. Of course, Japan is a Buddhist, but they have a Zen comes from this Shinto Buddhism, which is an amalgamation of their Shinto religion, which was basically nature worship, like many other traditional, or what's the right word, Aboriginal peoples around the world. It was nature worship. And then Buddhism came to Japan, and the presence of nature and the appreciation of nature, of course, blends very naturally with Buddhism. And Japan developed its own unique flavor or taste of Buddhism, and people were... It's inappropriate, really, to call it Shinto Buddhism, because the two things are separate. In practice, what emerged was Zen Buddhism. And Zen has that particular amalgamation of these things. That's why we have the Zen gardens and the Japanese gardens and so on. And how all Buddhist shrines and temples are surrounded by absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful spaces of nature attended to with the utmost of care, and to the search for perfection in nature. And the expression, the search to allow those plants, those monads of nature, be they stones, be they water, be they plants, those elementals, to express themselves and self-realize themselves in the highest form for the sake of others and for the sake of spirituality, for the sake of glorifying divinity through themselves. So we have no takers to explain to us why our exploration of the process of a rose self-realizing itself and us focusing on vases, what the issue is. Are you shy, or do you just not know? What is the relationship between a vase and the roses? Surely someone can answer that. One word. In our discussion, in our exploration of vases, we use the word several times, in fact. What is the nature of a vase? What is the nature of an earthenware? Thank you. Thank you, Roy. The relationship between the vase and the roses. All right, here we go. We get some answers now. A vase is a vessel. What the vase allows for is for the rose to be cut from the plant and to be taken indoors or wherever, to be taken away from its source, to be placed in water where it can continue its growth, it can continue its expression, it can bloom, it can reach its highest expression, fill a room with beauty and fragrance and joy. It can bring tremendous joy to people. If you've ever given roses to your mother or to your spouse, your wife or your girlfriend, or be it a special occasion, if you've taken flowers to someone who is ill in a hospital, flowers in a hospital room immediately brighten up the room. Flowers in a vase in any room immediately transform the energy of the space, and they impact anyone who enters into that room, because these flowers are beauty and love. They are physical expressions of these extremely divine characteristics, these divine phenomena. And the vase is the vessel that allows this to happen. But the process by which these roses, these flowers, come to bloom is that process reliant upon the ancestral history of vases. In other words, and do you need to know, if you are here to study and comprehend how the monad of a rose achieves self-realization and brings love and light to others inside of rooms, do you need to know the intricacies and the detailed science and art of pottery? in order for you to take a deep dive into the process of how a rose blooms. Yes or no? If you take a biology class and you study the reproductive cycle of roses or flowers of any kind, how many classes in that biology class or in that biology textbook, how many chapters will be devoted to the study of earthenware, the history of pottery, the geological mineral composition of clay, and at another level, how much time and energy in the biology class will be dedicated to the many artistic styles of pottery and the process by which the potter takes the creative avenues. And what is the creative process by which a craftsperson, a potter, makes vases? So now let us, with this self-evident experience, the answer, of course, is none. Because vases have nothing to do with the natural biology and processes of a rose. The two of them come together in the relationship of vessel and that which makes use of the vessel in order to self-realize and express itself in an unnatural place, in a place which normally it does not belong. Roses don't normally grow in living rooms or hospital rooms. Flowers don't normally grow in hospital rooms. They require a vessel in order to be there to express their beauty and bring joy and happiness and love to loved ones who are suffering in that hospital room. The rose needs a vessel. That's where the vessel comes in. That's its purpose, and that's its relationship to the rose. But how the rose brings beauty and joy and love, and how it achieves that self-realization, that highest expression of itself, has nothing to do with the nature and science of pottery, nor the history of pottery. If anything that we are saying strikes you as untrue, it strikes you as anything but objective fact, please, by all means, let us know in the comments. Tell us so. Because what we are showing you, what we are sharing with you, with one image, is the self-evident experiential knowledge. Everyone, we would wager, participating in this live stream, has at some point in their life put flowers in a vase. Either you were taking flowers to someone or you were receiving flowers from someone, and the first thing you do when you receive those flowers, you unwrap them, you cut the ends, and you put them in fresh water in a vase, and you put them in a place where everybody can see them. You put the flowers in a vessel so that those flowers can do what they were born to do, which is bring beauty and joy and love and happiness to others. And the monads of those flowers are beaming because they have been put into a place of honor. They have been put onto center stage. They can fill the room with love and light the way the sun fills the solar system and brings warmth and brings joy and brings hope to every being on every planet within the solar system. That's what flowers can do inside the dreary, dead, hollow space of a room, like especially a hospital room or a funeral parlor or any number of circumstances and situations. And we've all had that experience of placing flowers into a rose. And so we all know that the flowers require a vessel in order for them to be able to fulfill that task, their purpose for being in that particular moment, that particular lifetime, that particular existence. But to appreciate, to take a deep dive and comprehend the metaphysical and physical, the energetic and biological processes by which a rose achieves that self-expression, achieves that self-realization, that awakening, how it blooms, is separate from and largely unrelated to the process by which that vessel came into being. Its history, the artistic legacy, the ancestral legacy stretching back millennia, and the geologic ancestry of the earthenware, which stretches back millions of years. Because you can put those flowers in a glass vase, in an earthenware vase. You can put them in a plastic vase if you have nothing else to work with. You can put them in a beer stein. You can put them in a bucket of water. You can put them in a silver vase, a gold vase. Many, 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 many different options exist. And many forms of vessels exist. And many, 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 many types of flowers exist. But the process by which flowers bloom, that process is common to most flowers. Not all flowers. Orchids are different. There's sexual and asexual reproduction within plants. So some require pollinators, some self-pollinate, et cetera, et cetera. So, but by and large, flowers in a vase, by and large, follow more or less the same process by which they begin as a bud and they bloom. And then you put them in a vase and you put them on display and they fill the room, they fill the lives of the people around them with joy. And to the degree the vase doesn't conflict with that, to the degree the vessel supports that and helps them and allows them to achieve that, then the vase has its purpose and has its place. Of course, a vessel is required. But what we are talking about here and now is the relationship between the two and the degree to which discussion of one constitutes knowledge of the other. hopefully you all, through this experiment, this consciousness experiment, recognize now why it is that there is countless material out there online in New Age bookstores, and that focuses on the vase. But they profess and they proclaim to be speaking about the fundamentals of the process by which a rose achieves self-realization, by which a rose blooms. But what they're giving you is the vase. What they're talking about is, and they're talking about the ancestral legacy of vases and the nature of the clay in the vase and how its geological origins and how it has evolved over millennia. But they claim that this is essential information, this is essential wisdom in relationship to the process of self-realization of a rose. The rose here being, of course, ourselves, our innermost, that which is inside of the vessel, that which makes use of the vessel to be here and now in order to do its work, to fill the world with light and love and bring joy and happiness and peace and healing to others, to self-express its highest expression. A rose needs a vase. Of course, a rose can express itself in the garden, right? Souls can express themselves in the supernal worlds. They can express themselves if they've achieved nirvana or beyond. They express themselves up, but they do not have a vessel because they're in those supernal worlds. They have a different kind of vessel. They have their soil, or they have a different pot in the garden or what have you. It's a different nature. It's a different form in which they exist in the garden. But to come into the lives, to come into the home of someone, that rose will need a vessel. But the process by which it fulfills itself relates more to its relationship with water and light and air and its own internal biology than it does the ancestral artistic history and legacy of earthenware and pottery and the nature of the vase and the evolution of the vase over millennia through countless civilizations. So if what you wish to do is comprehend how to self-realize, in other words, if what we long for is to actually be like the rose and bloom and bring that love and light and fragrance and beauty and joy into the world through the vessel that we are in, where does the study of spirituality lay? What is truly spiritual? And what is just a vessel? This is your first clue for discernment as you are confronted by countless articles and videos and books and gurus and teachers and prophets and self-styled masters. Now, are we saying that you should ignore the vessel? Of course not. Your vessel shouldn't be cracked. Your vessel shouldn't leak water. There's all sorts of things that are important when it comes to the vessel. The vessel shouldn't be toxic. The vessel shouldn't be leaching toxic things into the water that's going to poison the rose. So having a good vessel, a beautiful vessel, a sturdy vessel, a strong vessel, these are all important. Because the relationship between the vessel and the rose is essential. But there comes a point when one needs to step back and say, okay, but am I a rose or am I a potter? If I'm here, if I'm a flower and I'm seeking for the process by which I can self-realize and bring that ineffable, subtle, yet powerful and undeniable beauty and joy and happiness into the world by blooming. That doesn't matter if you're a rose or a lily or a carnation, or it doesn't matter what kind of flower you might be, with the specific nature of the colors and the fragrances that you have to bring into the world. That's unique to you. But bloom you must first before you are able to achieve that. And to do so, you will require a vessel, and you have a vessel. You are here in a vase. You have a vase. And that vase is filled with water, the sexual waters. Ask yourself, if I'm a flower and I'm here to bloom, do I need to worry myself and do I need to focus my strengths and energies on the science and the technology of pottery and on the artistry of pottery? Do I need to become an expert in pottery if what I am is a flower and what I long to do beyond anything else is to bloom and fill the room around me with the colors and the fragrances, the scents and the sights that only I have to bring into that room? To be, in other words, to be. To be a true human being and express what the divine creator, that beauty that only divinity can create, through something as beautiful as a flower, something as precious and priceless as a rose, and the feelings of joy and happiness and an expression of love, and an expression of sacrifice, because all cut flowers ultimately sacrifice themselves to bring that beauty and joy and happiness and hope into dark, dreary places. and uplift all the other monads in those spaces. The example that we're giving here is hopefully illustrative enough for you to recognize the difference between genuine spirituality and faux spirituality, that which masquerades as spirituality. So, for example, we can talk about hatha yoga, contorting the body and having all of these different poses and doing all of these stretches and doing all of this stuff. And do you have any idea how many people there are around the world for whom hatha yoga is the foundation of their so-called spirituality? What does hatha yoga focus on? Or what does ecstatic dance focus on? What does discussions of ancestral DNA and our ancestors focus on? And awakening dormant DNA focus on? What does telepathy or awakening powers focus on? Comprehending and recognizing what we discussed a few episodes ago with relation to the mind. What does esoteric study focus on? What does even performing magic spells, or there are countless practices and so-called spiritual exercises, spiritual studies, so-called New Age studies and what have you, affirmations of the mind. What do affirmations achieve? Where do affirmations exist? What about psychedelics and taking psychedelics, which is a substance? When we know from our consciousness experiment here, the experiment of conscious imagination, where all we need is visualize some flowers in a vase, understanding that the vase is filled with water, the sexual waters, and the flowers need the precious air and the light, the solar light. And what the vase does is offer a vessel for all of that, to contain all of that, to allow the alchemy to take place, by which that flower can draw the sexual waters up its spine, its stem. And it's a thorny stem. It's a difficult, thorny stem. Working with the sexual waters is not easy. That's why they call it the path of the razor's edge. You can get pricked, pardon the pun. You can hurt yourself. It can cause It's a thorny, delicate process. But if that process takes place, then the nourishing fires within the waters of sex can cause that rose to bloom and express itself. It can help that rose achieve self-realization. And that takes place within the vase, within the vessel, no doubt. But that vessel could be clay, that vessel could be glass, that vessel could be silver or gold. It could be plastic. It could be a plastic water bottle. And many times you may have seen this. You may have gone into, not hotel rooms, hospital rooms. And you may have seen flowers that were brought to someone in the hospital, but they didn't bring a vase, and there was no vase handy, and they ended up putting the flowers in a water bottle. It was just a regular plastic water bottle. So the nature of the spirituality of the vessel is related to the way in which the vessel supports the self-realization, the self-actualization, the expression of the divine beauty and love and joy and hope of the rose, which is inside that vessel, and the process which the vessel supports and enables by containing the sexual waters and allowing the rose to draw them and use them and make use of them to express itself, to bloom. We encounter all the time in our life many supposed forms of spirituality. And like the example of the rose and the vase, many of these forms and expressions of spirituality, again, focus on the nature and the structure and the ancestral legacy of the vase. So let us speak in specifics now. For example, when occultists talk about ghosts, and when Aboriginal groups from around the world talk about their ancestors, why this is not spirituality. Because a ghost does not go to heaven. A ghost is the residual energetic imprint of a personality. The personality does not go to heaven. The personality is connected to the vessel. The personality is to us what the paint job on a vase is to the rose. Let us say that again. Your personality is to your innermost being what the decorations of a vase are to the nature of the rose. Period. After the rose dies, that vase is going to move on and be used for other things. But in our case, our vessel dies and our vessel decomposes. So imagine, if you will, that once a vase was chosen and once flowers were put into it, once those flowers died, that vase had to be taken out and smashed. And a vase is easy to smash physically and very quickly, but the designs on the vase, the paint, the glazing and what was baked into it will take a long time for that to fade away. One of the reasons why Gnostics prefer to be cremated is because when the body is turned to ash very quickly, there is less for the personality to cling to, and indeed less for the monad. If it happens to be attached to that body, the body is gone. There's nothing left for it to be attached to, and the personality will dissolve more quickly because the connection between itself and the physical body is severed. If the physical body has been turned to ash, there's nothing for it to be connected to anymore. But if you bury a body, it takes many, many hundreds of years, if not more, thousands of years, for the body to completely decompose, especially when you're talking about bones, right? Because bones don't really decompose; they mineralize. They become they become fossils. They fossilize. So for that reason, personalities, ghosts, can linger for a long, 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 long time. Occultists and spiritual, so-called spiritual people who focus on ghosts and focus on ancestors, focus on bodies buried in grounds and ancestral burial grounds and these types of things. This is not spirituality. This is attachment. This is identification. This is being wholly obsessed with pottery. Completely and wholly obsessed with pottery. A rose who believes that it exists because of some potter or some clay or some previous vases is not achieving self-realization, is not practicing the process of blooming. That rose is not being a rose. That rose is being a vase. That's what it means to be asleep. A rose who believes that it's a vase and lives as if it's a vase and worships and focuses on the ancestral legacy of its vaseness and is focusing on the nature of its clay and its geological heritage and and which particular potter shaped it and painted it and what style it's in, etc., 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 is not being a rose. To be or not to be, this is the question. To be or not to be is the spiritual question. It is the spiritual path. To be or not to be. Either I am that I am or I am not. I am something else. So I either am what I am, I'm either an awakened, enlightened being, a monad who is here now in this vessel, or I'm a vessel who believes that I'm already a god, who believes that I am one with my ancestors, who believes that I am one with the river delta and the animals and the trees and the plants and idolizes and worships mechanical nature. and believes that I am my dreams, and I am my thoughts, and I am my hopes, and I am my desire. This is not spiritual. This is antithetical to spirituality. The vase is not the rose. The vase will never be the rose as long as it remains a vase. And this is just objective, self-evident fact. It's the cold, hard facts, period. And it is quite evident. It's quite self-evident. If a rose obsesses over the nature of the vase to the detriment of its own process of blooming, it will remain a bud. It will remain a stem and a bud, a thorny bud. So you see, when you go around, for example, the Aboriginal the Aboriginal groups around the world, and you see what has proliferated in the West and has become so commonplace, has become fashionable. The art, body art, the art of tattoos, body art. How many New Age people and so-called spiritual people have adorned their body and cover their skin with permanent ink, or permanent, let's put permanent in quotation marks here in air quotes, because of course it's not permanent, but it is certainly as permanent as we can make it. Isn't this just painting the vase? And you can paint vases to be absolutely beautiful. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, let's take nothing away from some of these so-called body artists. Their talents, as far as their artistry goes, is remarkable. Some of these people, and just as the talents of potters and those who paint pottery, because it's actually a separate craft, it's a separate skill. Some people do both, but it's a separate discipline. The one who shapes the vases, the pottery, and then the one who paints them. It's a separate discipline. It's not to say that one individual can't be a master of both disciplines, but it is a separate process. And we can do a Google search for beautiful painted pottery, and we can see some stunning examples of beautiful painted pottery. And this is you can, of course, do this yourself at your own leisure. You can explore painted ceramics and painted pottery, and they're just absolutely beautiful and absolutely gorgeous. But at the end of the day, a vase, its purpose is to hold flowers. I mean, so as beautiful as the vase can be, a vase really doesn't achieve its fullest purpose unless it serves as a vessel for something. Even though a lot of people just keep vases, beautiful vases in their house, and it itself is the aspect of beauty, the item of beauty. And there's something to be said for beautiful vases. We're not trying to take anything away from that. But remember that what we're talking about here is being a rose and blooming. And if one's purpose is to be a blooming rose, and one shifts one's attention to painting the vase and making the vase beautiful and expressing and perhaps painting on the vase a blooming rose. This is what body art is. This is what all those so-called spiritual people who spend all this time and energy getting chakras tattooed onto their spinal column on their back, or at the coccyx, at the bottom of their spinal column. The women, you know, there was that trend for a while. They would get these beautiful blooming designs at the base of their spinal column, or they would get chakras opened, lotus flowers, right? All of their chakras open on their spinal column. Are their chakras actually open? Because we guarantee that someone who has actually awakened and opened and activated all of their chakras, and their spinal column is in activity, and they're working through pranayama, and they're working through sexual magic, through white tantra, with the sexual force, raising it up the spinal column, working with Divine Mother Kundalini, and is actually creating their solar bodies and awakening and opening and working with their chakras in an active way. Someone doing that work has absolutely no desire whatsoever to tattoo a chakra on their spine. None, zero. Because someone doing that work is not interested in painting the vase. Someone doing that work is blooming as a rose. Someone doing that work is not interested in advertising that they're doing that work, or wearing or tattooing medals of honor on their body to show off how spiritual they are. But look at those people who are adorning and painting their vases, their vessels, and calling it spirituality and calling it spiritual, and wearing their spirituality and emblazoning it on their vessel with a sense of permanence. It's this permanence that's the key. There's only one aspect of us which is permanent, and it's not our body, and it's not our personality, which we've covered. It's our monad. It's our being. That is what's eternal. And even that is just another vessel. It's an essence, it's a seed, it's a spark, and it's a vessel. And if it doesn't achieve, if it doesn't bloom, and if it doesn't achieve that expression of its true nature, of a blooming flower, of this beautiful expression of joy and love and hope for the sake of others, if it doesn't achieve that in a certain number of lifetimes, then it has to go and go through an entirely different process of devolution and then reinsertion and beginning the whole process again from ground zero. So it's eternal, but that's why they call it the wheel of samsara. That's why they call it the wheel of becoming, or the wheel of suffering. is that if you don't achieve it within time, then you have to descend back down, and then you got to go back down to ground zero and start all over from the beginning. And you need to go around and around and around the circle until you can achieve that expression and bloom and earn the right to get off that wheel. So it's a very clever evasion of ego to replace the permanence of the soul of the monad with the body. Through body art, through tattoos, through permanent ink. And let me emblazon upon myself the Divine Mother, Jesus, Odin. I put wings on my shoulder blades. I'll put chakras on my spine. I'll put swastikas or hearts or stars or the tetragram, and on and on and on and on and on it goes. Just do a Google search for body art. Specifically now, we're not talking about just anybody doing anything, but this is specifically now we're talking about what is and is not spiritual. Body art is not spiritual. It is not. There is nothing about getting a tattoo which is going to make you more spiritual. Zero. No master avatar teacher ever taught tattoos as part of the process of awakening and self-realization. The work that we have to do is internal. It's internal. And it's largely for us, that work is disassociating ourselves from the vessel, getting ourselves detached and unidentified with the vessel, and instead identified with the rose inside of the vessel. And that's what all masters and all teachers and all religions and all genuine spiritual traditions teach. It's revolutionary psychology, and it's alchemy. Should you also take care of your vessel? Should you make sure that the vessel contains the water? Should you preserve the water and not spill the water? Absolutely. Take care of the vessel, keep it relatively safe, or as safe as it can be kept, but not to the detriment of the rose inside. So don't hide it away in the closet, because the rose is never going to bloom in the closet. The vase is going to be safe, but the rose is not going to bloom. So there's a balance. We want to be prudent and practical, but we don't want to be so cautious and to have such comfort and security that the rose won't be able to bloom. Because if you take that vase with the rose in it and you pack it in styrofoam and you put it in a wooden crate and you stick it in a warehouse, sure, the vase is going to be safe. The vase is not going to crack. The vase is not going to break. The vessel is going to be very safe. And the rose is going to be very safe inside of that vessel, right? But is it going to bloom? So we can look at all of these aspects related to spirituality as it relates to the physical body, the vital body, the astral body, the mental body. And we can look at all of this talk of, and then expanding out from that, all of this so-called spiritual science where they talk about quantum physics, and they talk about the holographic nature of the universe, and they talk about sacred geometry, and they talk about gematria, and all of this stuff that goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and people can completely saturate themselves with sacred geometry, with astrology, with all of these aspects of physical reality and the metaphysical foundations of physical reality, and how those metaphysical foundations affect and express but operate the what appears on the surface as mechanical nature, and what affects us on that mechanical level. So let us look at astrology, for instance. Or, yeah, let's stick with astrology for a moment. Now, astrology has its place. And the study of astrology, in terms of the constellations, is important in terms of comprehending and understanding the different archetypes that each star sign represents. So, for example, in our case, we're Gemini. And Gemini happens to be the twins. And what are the twins? Well, the twins are Jacqueline and Boaz on the tree of life. So there is a meaningful association between Gemini, the twins, and the twins on the tree of life. And it's not by accident that Attlas is spelled with 2 T's and Allux is spelled with 2 L's, because that, and we're a Gemini, right? And we're air rising. It's because Gemini is an air sign. There is a relationship between that particular sign in our own life, in our own journey, and it says something about who we are and what we are here to do. But in terms of day-to-day astrology and what's happening now, and this will be good, and blah, 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 and if you're this and that, this is going to be auspicious, and that's not going to be auspicious, and do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that, or try to do this, try to do that, etc., etc. And people take this as the foundation of their spirituality. One must recognize that one's monad is not mechanical. The consciousness is not mechanical. The goal of any monad, the goal of any spiritual aspirant, is ultimately to overcome whatever limitations are associated with any one particular star sign. The goal of a spiritual aspirant is to be able to embody all 12 of the constellations. Why is that? Because the innermost being consists of 12 individuated aspects. Each aspect of the being embodies one of the timeless universal archetypes as represented by each of the star signs. So, having been born a particular sign in this lifetime relates to your journey and your purpose in this lifetime, and it's going to affect and relate to that. But as a spiritual aspirant, genuine spirituality is to transcend the limitations of astrology. Because one who has embodied and awoken the whole zodiac within oneself is beyond the limitations and the manipulations and the mechanical reactions which come with any particular moment, month, or planetary alignment, or alignment of constellations, where this now becomes auspicious and that doesn't become auspicious. If you are all 12 and operating through your being if you are awakening the Christ inside of you, who is at the heart of every single star in the entire universe, the great multiplicity of the fire of the fire and the light of lights, and you are working towards becoming a vessel of the Christ, of the Logos, because that's what a rose is when it truly blooms. The rose on the cross is the Christ on the cross. That's the rose on the cross for the Rosicrucians. The crown of thorns upon his head are rose bushes. Those are the thorns upon Christ's head. They are the thorns of the rose. The rose is the flower of love. Christ died for our sins out of love. He sacrificed himself as all bodhisattvas do. Christ is the living embodiment of love. If that is what you are doing, then there is no astrology that can hinder you or obstruct or affect you in any negative way. You are the light. You are aligned with the light itself. So constellations and planets and everything else, those are all physical bodies. When you are working as a true aspirant, you're working towards the 7th dimension. The being of your being. Your being is in the 6th dimension. But the being of your being is in the 7th, the world of absolute, the world of archetypes. Beyond the constellations. So let's dial it back now to let's switch from astrology to something else. Let's switch like quantum mechanics or any of these other spiritual scientific things talking about the 4th dimensions. Yes, Roy, we just mentioned that the Rosicrucians, the rose on the cross for the Rosicrucians is the Christ. Christ is the rose on the cross. That's where Rosicrucianism comes from. That's why they're called Rosicrucians, because rose and crucians meaning the crucified, the rose which is crucified on the cross. And the crown of thorns are rose bushes, are rose thorns. It's not by accident that we chose roses for tonight's discussion. But if we talk about spiritual science or any of these other phenomenon, and people talk about how reality comes into being and their spirituality is based around the so-called spiritual science and understanding in an intellectual way how 4th dimension and this and that and sacred geometry and all these other things, a simple question to ask them is are you already a cosmo creator? Are you a cosmo creator? If you don't know what that is, if you don't even know what that is, then clearly you are not one. Because if you were a cosmo creator, you would know what a cosmo creator is. And if you were a cosmo creator, guess what you would be doing? Guess what would be in your wheelhouse? Guess what you would be in the process of learning, developing through experience and mastering, because that's what a cosmo creator is here to master. But of course, a cosmo creator doesn't have a physical body like we have. Cosmo creator has a very different kind of vessel. Most cosmo creators that we would be aware of have planets as their physical body. This planet has a cosmo creator at its heart, at its center. His name is Melchizedek, Master Melchizedek. He is the cosmo creator and the being of this planet. He is responsible for all the beings on the planet that are all part of his physical body. To achieve that level, to become a cosmo creator, an angel, an archangel, one who has the ability to create new species and to manage those species and to create entire ecosystems and to create entire planets and manage entire planets. Can you begin to fathom the gnosis that they possess, the experiential knowledge, the self-evident experiential knowledge that they possess? Their process as cosmo creators in seeking to express the beauty, joy, and divinity of, and express the severity and mercy of love, of the divine light, and to express the logos, the Christ, through their body as a planet, as a star, as a sun. Because of course, once you've been a cosmo creator of one or more planets, then you can graduate to becoming the center of a solar system and managing multiple planets. It's all a process of experience. You have to have experience before you can graduate to the next level. None of us are anywhere near that level. So occupying ourselves well, you can feel free to share that with us anytime, Sean. Occupying ourselves with the stuff of cosmo creation, occupying ourselves with the stuff of cosmo creators, is that spirituality for us at our level? It's worthwhile to meditate on that. If you have not yet bloomed as a rose, is it appropriate for you to contemplate the process by which the rose came into existence, or the process by which the clay that's in the vessel came into existence, or the process by which the planet which gave birth to the substance of the clay, which is the stuff of the vessel. Why would you preoccupy yourself and spend all of your time and energy on that which is in the wheelhouse of a cosmo creator when we are nowhere near that level? Cosmo creator has to be an angel or an archangel or higher. A cosmo creator must have experience and knowledge, which it's not knowledge that the intellect can begin to understand anyway, let alone use in any practical sense. Yeah, absolutely. You have to be an ascended master. And an ascended master is a resurrected master. You have to be a resurrected master before you can be an ascended master, which means you have to be Christified, which means you have to have died and resurrected as Christ did. And that's just the first step. That doesn't make you a cosmo creator. That makes you an initiate. That makes you an adept initiate into the next level of advancement in that space of ascended masters, but you're at the bottom of that hierarchy. How many more reincarnations will you have to have before you can achieve the level of even embodying a small moon and being born and reincarnating as a small moon? And that, by the way, can only happen during the process of creation, the great after a great cosmic night. So the Mahamamantara, the great cosmic day and the great cosmic night, the great in-breath and out-breath of the universe, it's during the great cosmic night that the great accounting takes place. And all those who have accumulated gnosis and all those who have taken that collective experience, what gets decided upon and gets agreed upon, and who is going to reincarnate as what during the next Mahamamvantara. Who is going to be a new planet? Who's going to be a new this? Who's going to be a new star? What, and so on and so forth. This is a great process which takes place in the absolute. But this stuff is not the stuff of our speculation. What the hell do any of us know about any of this stuff, and why does it matter? We're just a rosebud in a vase. How so, Sean Rydell? How are we already stars? How are we already stars? How? How so? Okay. So Sean says we're made of energy. That means we're already stars. Okay. So let me ask you this. An acorn falls from an oak tree. Yeah? The acorn is made of the stuff of oak trees. The acorn even has oak tree DNA at its heart, at its center, at its foundation is oak tree DNA. And all of its cells, all of its matter, all the stuff of the acorn came from and is related to the oak tree. Is the acorn an oak tree? Is an acorn an oak tree? Sure, Adam Vaughn. It holds the potential to be an oak tree, no doubt. But is it an oak tree? Is an acorn an oak tree? Do you see how startlingly, frighteningly difficult it is, it seems, for people to answer this question? Because it obstructs and it offends and it disturbs and it disrupts. It's descendant of an oak tree. It fell from an oak tree. And it hasn't reached its level yet. Okay? These are interesting evasions of the truth. This is the mind evading and deflecting you from seeing the objective reality of the situation. Is an acorn an oak tree? This is why we don't have and will never have millions of followers on YouTube, or millions of subscribers, or millions of followers, because the truth disrupts the minds and mystic pride's concepts and beliefs about spirituality. Because the spirituality that people want to believe and people want to and people want to follow and people want to express is not true spirituality. It's faux spirituality. Okay, so yes to what? Is an acorn an oak tree? Is that your answer, Sean? Yes? You have to be specific now. You either say yes, an acorn is an oak tree, or no, it is not. Anyone else, feel free to chime in. Okay. You are wrong. Period. An acorn is not an oak tree. And anyone who mistakes an acorn for an oak tree is just delusional. Really? Does every acorn make an oak tree? How many acorns falls from an oak tree in the fall? How many? How many does an average acorn, an average oak drop to the ground? And how many of those acorns which fall from the oak tree become oak trees? There is no guarantee. There's absolutely no guarantee. In fact, it is a very, very, very small percentage of acorns which become oak trees. And by the way, before they do that, they have to become saplings. And before they become saplings, they have to sprout. And the process of sprouting is a process of death. The acorn must die. And a sapling is born from the dying husk and the dying kernel of the acorn. An acorn cannot be an oak tree because the acorn dies and the oak tree is born from the acorn. No. Let's not conflate things. This is not like saying a fetus is a baby. No, this is like saying an egg is a chicken. Do you know how many periods a woman has in her lifetime? Do you know how many eggs a chicken will lay in its lifetime? Do you know how many of those chickens, those eggs will become chickens? An egg is not a fetus. An egg is an egg. Because when a woman has her period, she's expelling an egg from her body and making way for new eggs in her ovaries. When the placenta gets flushed out of the body, the eggs from the ovaries that were preparing to receive sperm also get flushed out, and new fresh eggs go into the ovaries, into the ovum, are planted in the placenta. That's why women have periods, and that's why chickens lay eggs. But those eggs are not fetuses. Those eggs are not chickens. What led us to that is we told you we would give you practical, self-evident facts that you can use in your pursuit of genuine spirituality, not this bullshit new age spirituality. We are all stars already. No, we are not. Period. Because if you were a star, you would be out there in space with planets revolving around you. But you are not. You are here now, a rosebud in a vase. That is what you are. Now, you know, you don't have to take our word for it. You can believe whatever you want to believe. We're just a messenger. We're just a messenger. And there's really only one thing a messenger can do. And on the topic of messages and seeds, we offer you the following. When I awoke to find myself in the earth, bereft of truth and with so little mirth, nearby a cooing was a dove, small paws a stomping from above. Where is this place? I thought aloud. Right here, chirped back a voice quite proud. Good sir, I begged, confused as hell. What is your name, good kind sir? Do tell. Mercury, say some quicksilver. But to you, wee seed, I am Ratatosker. Well met, good squirrel. Might I inquire, why do you bury me in this mire? 'Tis my duty, wee nut, since you ask, to serve the ash, my noble task. Running roots to branches leafy, I impart the word, albeit briefly. Then tell me, courier, goodly sprite, why do I suffer in this awful night? You fell from leaves, that much is true, and I'm now here to bury you. Then ask of them for me or charge, what is my place in the world at large? Bring a reply to a message, say you? We live to scamper, oak, ash, or yew. And with that he was gone in much more than a dash. Before I could think, he was back in a flash. Don't ask us, say the leaves, we work for the bough. Shall I ask the branches if they know who art thou? By the time I said do so to my rascally friend, he returned with the news that might never end. They say it's not up to us, we work for the trunk, yet me knows there's an answer, so get out of your funk. But I did not hear him, my spirits were sunk. How could I continue? On dismay was I drunk. Roots are my master, says the trunk on this day. As I depart again, let go your dismay. Just then I was moved, stoked fire by some bellow. What just happened? Said I. Report, my good fellow. Relax, my dear seed, lest your shell become broken. Everything is fine. Needhogger has spoken. Hidden is she in the 3 roots of Yggdrasil. This wisdom, declared she, I serve the great eagle. Then fly like the wind, dear rodent of fire, and answer the riddle, my one true heart's desire. With pleasure, my lord. And again he was gone. The heavens we serve, great eagle hath shone. By my shell, this game is getting long in the tooth. Long is the path up Yggdrasil, forsooth. My apologies, dear rascal. Ratatosker, you knave! Beg pardon, good sir. Can time we not save? Does my speed not suffice, you impatient speck? Here's my sore paws and your pain in the neck. Forgive me, good messenger, but how will you ask the heavens to answer and be taken to task? Great eagle hath asked them, and to me he conveyed. The earth was their answer, and to you now relayed. Good Lord, to rest will this never be laid? Thank you, good squirrel. May this great debt be repaid. So I asked the good earth, surrounding myself, if it would be so kind as to reveal my true self. We serve the sun, rumbled she mightily. Under command of the moon, she added begrudgingly. Good sun in the sky, will you not hear my call? Reveal my true purpose. Oh, why did I fall? Once again did the squirrel up the tree run, and return with this answer, "Not just for fun, but surely our answer can only take you so far. Thus we return to the brotherhood of the star." So close did I feel to the answers I sought, yet so far were the stars, great eagle or not. "Relax," said Ratatoskr, "even though I do not. Patience and virtue are siblings, are they not? Back up do I fly, and great eagle thereafter. Return to you will I, with news of hereafter." In good time my faithful messenger returned. "The brotherhood serves space," was what he had learned. "And who does space serve?" I asked in a quip. Ratatoskr departed his tail like a whip. Ages went by, countless lifetimes, we confess. "Space serves this light, no more and no less." "Then surely, good messenger, the journey's near end. For whom but the light can the final word send?" "I shall a big drizzle again, dear master Ash Essence, that you may realize at last, and of all this make sense." Strange patience welled up as never before. No longing, worry, or thought for what was in store. Just sitting and waiting as I did before, not expecting a knock or to answer the door. Not thinking, not doing, no grandiose galore, just being in earth, no less and no more. Then out of the silence came a cooing the dove. "We are whom the light serves. We are pure love. We've been in the nous atom, in seed within song. Fear not, son of Ash, we've been with you all along." My shell it cracked open. My heart swelled like the sea. If a seed ever had eyes, mine cried joyous and free. The sun in my heart, the stars in solidarity, the inner Akash received limitless light within me. Great eagle above, his consort dragon below, faithful squirrel betwixt them, great Mercury, we know. Our prayer had been answered, our dread wanting belayed. Great hell had come knocking and would not be delayed. Ratatoskr gave hell to coin squirreled away. Into hell would we sink until at least the third day. "We thank you, great dove, kind source of the light. We go in peace and in joy without any fright." And die I did there, bathed in love's delight. With all of love's blessing, I passed into hell's night. Some time later broke ground, a little wee sprout. It struggled and suffered and grew itself out. Now we are here, an ash at love's behest, not thinking or doing, just being our best. No care in the world but that of love's deeds. Ratatoskr and I, here planting more seeds. We don't write, and especially don't read, a great deal of poetry. Here's a news flash, Adam. Molecules and atoms don't exist. They're an illusion. To say that something is made of the stuff of something else, therefore it is that thing, it's just an erroneous association of ego mind. Michelangelo used paint to paint the Sistine Chapel. The same paint that many other painters in the markets, the street vendors and painters in the markets, were painting portraits of people for pennies in the markets. Where are those portraits? And where's the Sistine Chapel? Leonardo da Vinci used the same canvas and the same paint as many other artists in his day. Why is their work not hanging in the Louvre? Why is Leonardo da Vinci's? Have you ever seen David? Michelangelo's carving of David? It's made out of marble. Why are not the marble countertops being sold at Home Depot? Why are they not David? It's made of the same stuff. It's just marble. No, we're speaking of a fact. We're speaking of a fact. Mozart's music uses the same vibrations, the same air as gangster rap. Is gangster rap going to be around 500 years from now? What about Beethoven? What about Beethoven? You know, so the same substance can take on many different forms. The same foundations of dogmatic idolatry religion are the same foundations of gnosis. Do those dogmatic religious fanatics, are they Gnostics? There is a, this is a, how is talent not substance? It's not a physical substance, but how is it not a substance? How is it not substantial? Does talent not have real world effects? Does talent not produce real world results? Then how is it not a substance? It's not just not a physical substance, but it is substantial. Talent has a substantial impact in the world, and it makes all the difference in the results. Cause and effect, the great law of karma, the great law of cause and effect. How is a cause not substantial? Every cause is substantial. It has some sort of substantial influence upon its associated effect. When you begin to strip away all of the superfluous rationalizations and intellectualizations, you end up with the stark, objective reality of the situation, which may not agree with your intellectual reasoning or that which has brought you to this point. But guess what? You're at this point because the rosebud needs to bloom. And if you look at a rosebud and look at a rose bloom, there is substantial difference between the two. And what's more important, there's substantial difference between the vase and the rose. There is a substantial difference between the two. And if what you are here to be is to be a rose which blooms, then rationalizing that both the clay in the vase and the substance of the rose both came from the earth, ergo they're the same, is not helping you. And it's not going to assist you in blooming as a rose, because you're going to keep identifying with the vase. Okay, then compare Mozart to Jimi Hendrix. That the case both well known in different categories of music, yet both still very well known. Okay, So they're both very well known. And Hitler is very well known. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? Jimi Hendrix was very, very talented. Was a very talented musician. He was a very extremely talented guitarist. Take nothing away from his talent, his ability. I mean, what would you like? What would you like us to compare exactly? What's the point of this comparison that you are making? You were talking about sculpture, but not comparing it to another talented sculptor was my point. No, what we were talking about was the point that you were making. That both David and the countertop at Home Depot are made of the same stuff called marble. Ergo, according to your reasoning, David and the countertops at Home Depot are the same because they're both made from marble. That was our point, the point that we were making. And to put it another way, right? So the David compared to any other sculpture, right? So and no other sculpture is Michelangelo's David. That's the point. No other sculpture is Michelangelo's David. Even the copies that you can buy of that look like Michelangelo's David are not Michelangelo's David. The photographs of the Sistine Chapel are not the Sistine Chapel. The photographs of the Mona Lisa are not the Mona Lisa. We are faced with, at some point along in our journey, the severity of the harsh light of reality, because it is a harsh light. When we've been in the dark for so long and we come out into the light, it's harsh, and we squint and we flirt our eyes because it's too much. We don't want it. It's blinding. The light is blinding, or it feels like that way because we've been in the dark for so long. And we've been in Plato's cave. We've been watching the shadows on the wall, believing that we understand the nature of the light and the nature of the world. But we're watching the shadows on the wall. But at some point, if we truly long to awaken and self-realize and step out of the cave, we have to leave the cave. We have to leave the shadows of the mind behind. We encourage you to go back and watch the program that we did on the nature of the mind and mastering the mind, to master the mind or remain its slave. And as you can see, a great deal of so-called spirituality simply resides in people's minds and people's ideas and people's beliefs and rationalizations about it. That is not spirituality. That is not spiritual. The mind is not spiritual. The mind is the adversary. The mind is the antithesis of spirituality. Because beingness is beingness. You and I are not supposed to be human thinkings and human believings. We are meant to be human beings. Laugh out loud. That's one of my lines in one of my songs. For most of the light is blinding. Yeah. But think about that. We're supposed to be human beings, not human doings, not human rationalizings, not human thinkings, human beings. Time to pull up a meme or two because it's apropos to what we're looking at here. So when people think of spirituality, what most people think about, when we say most people, we mean now the vast majority of people on the planet. They talk about faith. Okay? But the faith that they talk about is the faith of belief. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Muhammad. I believe that Muhammad is the one and only prophet of Allah, for example. Or I believe that Jesus Christ is the only son of God, and so on and so forth, right? So their religion, their spirituality is based around belief. And they call this faith. But this is not faith. That is not what faith means. That is the degenerated form of the word. That's the degenerated meaning of the word. What faith truly means is the following. To be faithful to our better half means to experience union with them physically, to know our mortal beloved intimately. To be faithful to our higher self means to experience union with our innermost being metaphysically, to know our immortal beloved intimately. To bind together, which is religare in Latin and yug in Sanskrit, the root words of religion and yoga respectively, to bind together with our innermost intimate essence of Christ is the true meaning and nature of having faith. In other words, to have true faith is to be one with the Christ, with the Logos, to be a self-realized monad, to be a blooming rose, to be that spark, that seed, that essence of Christ inside of us, the innermost intimate Christ inside of us, expressing itself, self-realizing through us, its vessel, its vase, here in the world, in the same way that a rose needs a vase to be in the hospital room so it can bring joy and peace and hope to the people who are suffering there. True faith is to be, not believe, not think, not reason, not rationalize, has nothing to do with the mind. Being has nothing to do with the mind. Zero. And neither does faith have anything to do with belief. Which means the vast majority of people in this world who believe themselves to be spiritual but function under an erroneous definition of the word faith and believe themselves to have faith, they're all delusional. They're all kidding themselves. They're all suffering and trapped and enslaved by their own ego mind and their ego emotions, their sentimentality, because sentimentality goes hand in hand, the superstitious beliefs. That's not faith. To have faith means you can give faith. To be able to give faith means to be able to testify. To be able to testify, who can testify? Who can testify in a court of law? A witness. What is a witness? One who has seen, one who was there, one who saw what happened is a witness. or a witness who is an expert in the field. They're an expert in the field because they're a coroner, or they're a policeman, or they're a detective, or they're so on and so forth. And they have experience, they have wisdom, they have knowledge related to the case. So they can be an expert witness because they have gnosis. They have self-evident experiential knowledge. They can give faith because they are one and connected to. They are bound up in the case. They are bound up in the circumstances of the case and the facts of the case. They are bound together. They have religare, they have yug with the facts of the case. Thus, they can give faith. They can give testimony. They can bear witness. This is spirituality. Now, there's a problem with this definition of spirituality. And the problem, of course, comes in the form of people who take psychedelics and go on trips. And they come back from these trips and they have these phenomenal experiences. And they come back and they profess themselves to be awake. They profess themselves to be enlightened. They profess themselves to be masters and one with the universe. They profess themselves to have knowledge of the nature of reality and the nature of the supernal worlds. They believe themselves because those psychedelic experiences make them feel that they are one with everything in the whole universe, and that their journey is complete, their journey is over. And so what happens is this is people who take these psychedelics on a continual basis. They keep returning, they keep going back and taking these trips. They keep going back and taking these trips with these drugs. And the problem is that they believe that their experiences are genuine, objective, and that therefore they are bound together with objective fact in the whole universe and all beings, and that they have the answers, that they now know, they have gnosis, they have self-evident experiential knowledge because they experienced it. That they have true faith. We did a program early on in the season related to the tricks, traps, and pitfalls on the spiritual path, and psychedelics. We included psychedelics in that program because of the visceral, powerful, enticing, tempting, and utterly hypnotizing and mesmerizing experiences that psychedelics offer people. And it's such a powerful prison. It's a prison of the mind. It's the lunar astral plane, not the solar astral plane. It's a lunar astral plane. It is a subjective experience. And the funny thing is that when you tell people that, who do these psychedelics on a regular basis, they lose their mind. They go crazy. And they start giving all these rationalizations and reasons why you're wrong. And they start asking you, well, have you ever done psychedelics? How many psychedelics have you done? This and that and the other thing. Because we have experience. I have experience. I'm an experienced psychedelic user. You have never even tried them, blah, blah, blah. How do you know what you're talking about? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The simple truth is they took a substance. They were subjecting their consciousness to the effects of a substance and the metaphysical nature of those substances on their metaphysical nature. So their consciousness was subjected to some influence, and they went on this and they had an experience as a result. Can they have these experiences without the psychedelics? The answer is no, they can't. Can we have those experiences without psychedelics? And the answer is no, we can't. And do you know why we can't? Because we're not taking the psychedelics. We have had experiences, and we've had experiences in the astral plane. We've had experiences in the lunar astral plane. We've had experiences in the solar astral plane. And we've had other experiences. Had experiences of being touched by the Christ. We've had many experiences without any drug use or any substance use whatsoever. And guess what? We've never had an experience that we would consider to be psychedelic in nature. None of the experiences that we have had we would group into some form of multicolored psychedelic amusement park ride for the consciousness. And the reason is genuine spiritual experience has no marketing associated with it. Genuine spiritual experience isn't trying to sell you anything, isn't trying to sell you something, isn't trying to convince you of anything. A real spiritual experience is, generally speaking, mundane, and boring is not the right word, but exciting and I don't know, enticing and tempting, and like these are. It's not an amusement park ride. Genuine spiritual experience is not Disney World, but psychedelics is that. Genuine spiritual experience is nutrition. It's not the candy store, but psychedelics is the candy store. It's absolutely the candy store. There's one exception to that rule, and that's Mother Ayahuasca, when she takes you into hell and shows you your demons. Then you have what's called a bad trip. And when you have a bad trip and your demons are revealed to you, and you see your demons, your egos face to face, and you have what's called a bad trip, that's actually a good trip, because finally you're getting to see something of value. You're not in the candy store anymore. Now you're seeing something of value there. You're seeing your demons face to face, and you're awakening to what's been haunting your life and what's been controlling your life from your subconsciousness, the lunar astral plane. So, for example, when Dr. Gabor Mate works with extreme heroin addicts in Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, Canada, and he takes them up into the forest, and he works with does the same rituals as the shamans do in South America. He's the only individual in Canada who's licensed to administer ayahuasca in Canada, because it's a controlled substance in Canada. And he works with these. He used to take them down to South America, but then he got a medical exemption from the government to be able to administer ayahuasca on Canadian soil, and he got the exemption. So now he takes these severe heroin addicts, he takes them up into the forest, he performs this very sacred ritual, he administers ayahuasca, and these heroin addicts go on this trip, and they finally get to see the demon of their addiction face to face, the demon that's behind their self-loathing. They get to see it face to face, and finally, they can comprehend the nature of their addiction. And they come back from those trips changed. But was it the drug that changed them? And where did the drug take them? The drug take them. The only place that any drug can take anybody, the lunar astral plane, klipoth, psychological hell. No drug can take anybody anywhere else but hell, because that is the subjective realm. And if you are subjecting yourself to a substance, you can be taken only to the destination of subjectivity. You cannot achieve objective. You cannot go to the solar astral plane in a lunar body. You cannot. You cannot go to the solar astral plane taken by a lunar mechanical device, an aspect of lunar mechanical nature. It can't happen. And if you do go to the solar astral plane through meditation, through your own efforts, through pranayama and sexual alchemy and raising the kundalini and creating the solar body, and you create the solar vehicle to be able to travel in the solar astral plane, or you have your solar astral body that you created in previous lifetimes, and you reawaken it, and you are given the ability to travel with it for a period of time. So you can go on to you can project into the astral plane a number of times because you have your solar body from previous lifetimes. You're shown what you need to see, and then very often your solar astral body is taken away from you again. And you won't be able to project into the astral plane because you've seen what you needed to see, been shown what you needed to show, and then your being takes back your access to the solar astral body again. But there's many people who they believe that because they can project into the astral plane, they can lucid dream, that they're already awake, they're all Buddhas, they're all one with the universe. They're projecting in the lunar astral plane. They're projecting through their personality and through their ego, and they're traveling in hell. But because they're awake, right? Because they're conscious, because they're lucid dreaming, they think that they're conscious. They think that they're awake, but they're actually awakening negatively. They're awakening as demons. This is not spirituality. This is the opposite of spirituality. This is another trap. But they have these experiences, and because they have these experiences, they're duped into believing, right? Their mind takes that experience and runs with it. Whereas discernment comes from intuition. Discernment is a quality of consciousness, not the mind. If you allow your mind to be the final arbiter of what is and is not spiritual, you are not walking the spiritual path. You are walking a path that is antithetical to spirituality, because you are not qualified to determine what is and is not spiritual, just as I am not qualified to determine that. But our consciousness, our innermost being, our intuition, which intuits when we receive, when our Mercury, when our Ratatoskr runs up the tree of life inside of us and consults with our innermost being and beyond our innermost being, the being of our being, the Christ, the Logos, and consults with the Brotherhood of the Star and comes back and reports to us. Then we have a different quality of information that we are receiving. The purpose of meditation is to receive information. Information which cannot be rationalized, it cannot be arrived at through reason. The mind cannot end up with that knowledge, objective reality. The mind can only end up with subjective truth. But the consciousness can transmit from the being, through the being, from the Logos, can transmit objective truth. And we can receive that and know that. And therein lies discernment. Therein lies intuition, innovation, insight, inspiration, imagination from the innermost. And when we let go and abandon our lower faculties and abandon the idea that I am qualified and I am spiritual, and we assume an attitude of radical humility, then we can be truly on a spiritual path. Then we can be truly spiritual. Radical humility. I am nothing. I am a vase, right? I am a vase. That is an objective fact. This body, this mind, this personality, the voice, the sound of the voice speaking to you, the mouth that's moving, it's just a vessel. The being inside is Attlas. And Attlas, as a monad, is just a seed. It's just a spark. Right? He too is just a messenger of the light, of the beauty, of the hope, of the fragrance that this vase is here, letting that rose inside bloom so that the essence of roseness can express through it into the world. And that beauty and that majesty and that hope and that light and that love and that joy and that healing that comes through that blooming rose into the world, that comes from the Logos, that comes from God, that comes from the Cosmo Creator that designed that absolute beautiful expression of love. So what the hell am I compared to all of that? Exactly. Just some clay that happened to be fashioned into a vase, that happened to be filled with sexual energy, the fires and waters of sex, that I try as best I can to contain inside of this vessel for the sake of the rose within, the rose on the cross, the innermost bodhisattva who is here to bloom, and not just bloom, but die in that vase, in that hospital room, for the sake of suffering humanity lying in that hospital bed. This is spirituality. You will never hear me say, I am spiritual. No, I am nothing. I am a vessel, nothing more. I'm a messenger. I'm a servant. The work that was given, that was presented, that I have felt in my heart since a child has always been overwhelming, has been greater, so bigger than any of us. And I've always felt humbled and honored and privileged to have been chosen, selected to be the vase, to hold that rose, to do this work. Now, was I always this way? No, because I went through a challenging childhood and a difficult adolescence. And like most adolescents, right, I developed an attitude And I went through that whole process of learning, right? Of making lots of mistakes and thinking lots of stupid things and believing a lot of stupid things about myself and conflating my innermost being with me, the vessel, and mixing up the rose and the vase. The reason why we can speak about all this is because we've been through it. We made all these mistakes in the past. We were that person that was obsessed with the vase, and we were that person that was, conflating the two and mixing the two up. We were that person who was turning to the New Age and other sources of information. But always, always within, there was this tug, this pull in our heart. There's always this intuition saying, you know what, this doesn't pass the smell test. There's something wrong about this. There's something wrong about what we're doing. There's something wrong about what I'm doing. Every road that we turn down, every religion, everything we turn down, we ended up in a dead end because they promised the universe, but they could never deliver. All they could deliver was more bullshit, more belief, more stuff that they wanted you to buy into. It was all marketing. It was all marketing and sales. Because let's face it, organized religion and the New Age movement, they are industries. They are businesses. They are powerful, very wealthy industries. The New Age movement is a business. They're into marketing and sales. And genuine spirituality doesn't sell anything. Genuine spirituality, you know what? It's like we say, you don't have to take our word for anything. We're just a messenger. We're just here planting seeds. That's all we're doing. It's up to you if those seeds germinate or not. It's up to you whether or not you're going to bloom as a rose. It's not up to me. It's not my responsibility. It's nobody's responsibility, and nobody can make you bloom, and nobody can sell you anything that's going to make you bloom, and nobody can give you anything that you can take that's going to make you bloom. It's entirely 100% in your own hands, yours and your innermost being. It's for you to work that out with yourself. And you either will or you won't. We wanted to show you something else here, and that's going to take you too long to find it that way. Yes, here it is. If you're familiar with the musical Beauty and the Beast, the animated movie, Lumiere is a wonderful character, the candlestick. He has 3 flames. That already is significant. Trinity, a tri-unity of fire and light. Lumiere. And he sings in his song, Be Our Guest. He sings the lyric, life is so unnerving for a servant who's not serving. He's not whole without a soul to wait upon. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, we have an image of Master Samael, and he says, have patience, have faith, he says, have faith. In time, you will possess your souls. And we're referring here to the human soul, which must be created. We're not born with our human soul. We have to create it. And it's the human soul which connects us between... The human soul is the connecting tissue between the false self, or the vessel, the vase, and the true self, the rose, the rosebud in the vase. There's the integration of the two takes place when we create our human soul. A servant is one whose nobility comes from the virtues of their Lord. They serve a noble master, a noble Lord, and they assist their Lord in doing their work. So, for example, the squire who works for a knight. The knight is noble, the knight does great feats, the squire assists the knight. The squire helps the knight put on his armor. The squire makes sure that his horses are horseshoed and fed, and et cetera, et cetera. So the squire is a servant who serves the knight. The knight performs great noble deeds, and the squire serves him. And that it's the relationship between Hanuman and Rama in the Ramayana. And both of them are on a mission to free Krishna, which is the Christ. But Hanuman is the monkey god. And Hanuman serves Rama. And Hanuman does most of the work. Because Hanuman, the monkey god, is the physical vessel. And the personality. And the mind. And the heart. That's the monkey god, right? A divine human being. A true human being. And then inside of him is Rama, the master, the Lord, the innermost. And they're doing their feats in the world for the sake of Krishna, for the sake of the Christ. So to have an attitude of service, to be a servant to one's higher self, one's true purpose, to surrender oneself, is to let go of all pretense and let go of all concepts of I am spiritual and I am this and I am that and I will ascend. No, you won't. Just as I won't. This body, this personality this body is going to rot in the ground. Well, actually, no, this body is going to burn in flames because it's in my will that I wish to be cremated. I don't wish to be buried. And this personality is going to be dissolved because we have had many bodies and many personalities. And our connection to our family is our soul family. Those individuals in our life who we've lived many lifetimes together with. It's not our connection to our ancestors and our ancestral family and our DNA. That only relates to the vessel. Our connection is our soul family, the monads who are here now with us doing this great work of the Attlas project. We're going to take some questions really quick. Sean asks, are you the respondent to messages sent to this page? I have to get some sleep, but want to get in touch with you later. Yes, we are. When we say we refers to my innermost being, Attlas. Atlas's innermost being, Alux, all light, God light, the logos. And me, their mortal vessel and messenger. That's we. We don't have any interns working for us. We don't have any wrenches. We don't have anybody working our channels or anything else. It's just us. It's just me. So if you send a message to Attlas Information or to YouTube or whatever, or send a message to Attlas Alex on Facebook, then we will respond to you directly. Okay. Roy asks, hey brother, is the innermost being our master, or there is another level of being we called master within? There is the being and the being of our being, because there are levels and levels. But everything comes through. So Everything comes through our innermost being. Now, we also have to contend with our egos. And we mustn't make the mistake of confusing our egos with our innermost, because our egos are going to try to pass themselves off as our innermost being. And that's a very real danger. And that is something that's worthwhile to keep in mind as we go through, is to recognize that our many egos play us via this game of King of the Hill, which they play. They enslave our consciousness, and they steal our vital energy, the sexual force. And they do that through the dialectic of craving, I want this, and aversion, I don't want that. And identification, for example, I am the greatest, or rejection, I am the worst. And combinations of the two, for example, rationalization, they will like me if I do this, or irrationality, they all hate me. Our egos are not our friends, but they certainly try to pass themselves off as our friends. And not only that, they, in no uncertain terms, are trying to play the role of our master. Egos want to control us. Egos want to be our master. And the way they do that is by convincing us that we are our own master, through pride, through desire, through what have you. So, but the egos most often express themselves as I. So they try to pass themselves off as us, but by us meaning passing themselves off as our innermost being, which is why so many people are asleep and are confused and conflate the vessel with the rose, because the ego is constantly saying, for example, I am spiritual. Mystic pride will say, I am so spiritual, I am so spiritual, I am so spiritual. So you have all those people in the New Age going around saying, I am so spiritual, I am so spiritual, I am so spiritual. They're anything but spiritual. They're bottled up and completely hypnotized by their ego. They're mesmerized by their ego. And what are they mesmerized by? How did the ego hypnotize them? By feeding them, I am spiritual, I am spiritual, I am spiritual. So that has given rise to an entire discipline in the New Age called affirmations, where you can buy from Susan Hay, and oh boy, will she sell you CDs and DVDs and books. Oh boy, will Susan Hay sell you stuff, and her company of New Age publishers. Boy, will she sell you stuff. And subliminal CDs and CDs programmed in this frequency and that frequency and recorded here and there and everywhere, and put in your earbuds and go to sleep playing, I am unlimited abundance. I am unlimited love. I am infinite light. I am unlimited, all my desires fulfilled. And I am all that. And just I. Filling the mind, programming the mind with just very beautiful, very enticing, very tempting ideas, concepts, thoughts, and beliefs. But there is nothing spiritual about that. They absolutely are abusing the I am that I am. This is called black magic. when someone manipulates God, essentially, manipulates the logos and tries to game the system. And that's finally, we're getting into the second part of what was the title of this talk: to play the game or to game the system. Because when you're performing these affirmations and you're making yourself feel more spiritual and you're making yourself believe you are God and believe you are unlimited abundance and believe you are one with the logos and believe you are all these things, but that does not make it so. So they also teach manifesting desires. And yes, you can put a great deal of energy, effort, willpower, and psychic focus and concentration to alter events and circumstances and results and outcomes. You can do that. It is possible. It's called black magic. It's called the left hand path. It is occult, but it is not spiritual. Unless you worship your egos, unless you worship your individual shaitan, unless you want to bloom, not as a rose, but as a poisonous poison ivy or some other. We're not that familiar with poisonous plants, but just imagine the most horrific poisonous plant, or I don't know, something like the black dahlia or something. Or like there must be a related symbol or metaphor on the botanical side that you can imagine, like a Venus flytrap or something, where you're not blooming as a rose, you're blooming as something else. But technically, what you're really doing is you're glorifying the vessel, and you're emptying out the water, and what you're doing is you're letting the rose die for the sake of glorifying the vessel and putting the vessel on a pedestal and awakening as the vessel, where the vase now is what matters. And you're painting the vessel, and now you're using the vessel's capacity as a vessel. You're emptying out the water in order to fill it up with gold, with jewels, with diamonds, with fame, with fortune, with followers, right? People who come in and worship the vessel, the same way that this world seems obsessed with the Holy Grail, the actual physical cup. They don't realize that it's a symbol. The Holy Grail is a symbol for white Tantra. The Holy Grail is a symbol for the vessel, that we are the vessel, and how to turn each and every one of us into the Holy Grail. We are the Holy Grail. If we do the work on ourselves, we can be the cup of the new covenant, the cup of the new and everlasting covenant. But to do that, we have to shed our blood and catch the blood of Christ. And so in order for us to become the vessel that gives eternal life, right? We are the grail, but we have to become, like, we are the vessel, right? But in order to do that, the Christ has to die and be born again. All that process has to take place inside of us before we can become the Holy Grail. But again, the ego mind is going to project and externalize and say, no, seek ye the cup out there. The Holy Grail is out there somewhere. The Holy Grail is not out there. The Holy Grail is in here. And the quest for the Holy Grail takes place in here, in our mind, in our heart, in our body, in our consciousness. And the knight which goes on that quest is our innermost being. And we are the squire who serves that knight. And of course, this brings us to this article, is one of the first articles that we wrote, To Herd or Not to Herd. And to appreciate and understand that relationship, because we're more than just a vessel, right? Vessel denotes a kind of a passive role where we're just holding and containing. But in fact, we're much more than just a vessel, right? We're a servant. And here we see what the caption says here underneath this image. It says, the humble shepherd, hidden master, warrior monk, noble samurai. How do we relate to them and to the archetype of the magician? And here we have this shepherd, this Oriental Asian shepherd, and but he's also a hidden samurai, right? And he has his sheepdog here. And the relationship between these two is the relationship between our innermost and ourselves, and that's what this article explores in great detail. And again, practical real world examples. A shepherd and his sheepdog. This is not highfalutin, psychedelic, quantum physics, sacred geometry, gematria, constellations, astrology. No. What could be more down to earth than a shepherd and his sheepdog herding sheep? You want to know you want to know what spirituality is? You want to know what it means to be spiritual? Read this article and then meditate on the relationship between the master and his working dog, his sheepdog, the shepherd and his sheepdog, the master and his working dog. The farmer and the truffle pig as they go through the forest hunting for truffles. You want to understand spirituality? You want to know spirituality? That's spirituality. There's your example, your case study. Spirituality is not metaphysical roller coaster riding in the astral plane. It's not psychedelics. It's none of those things. We've said this countless times. Spirituality, true spirituality, is mundane, down to earth, moment by moment, here and now, in the vessel that we are. No matter what level we are at, the Logos is speaking to us all the time. God is speaking to us all the time. If we have but the eyes to see and the ears to hear it, we will hear him speaking to us within us and from without, through the people around us, through the people who love us, through the people who hate us, and through the people who don't even know us, through the people who have never met us. Because our Divine Mother is the one who arranges everything that we need in this life, including all of our tests, trials, and ordeals, which is another article that we would highly, highly recommend. You want to know what spirituality is? Know your Divine Mother. Remember her, moment by moment by moment. Remember your Divine Mother. Your Divine Mother who's not separate from your innermost being. We all have divine masculine and divine feminine inside of us because we all have our innermost intimate Christ. That seed, that spark, that essence of the Logos is within us. And the Logos is androgynous. The Logos has both masculine and feminine. The Logos is the Tao. We have that within us. You want to know what spirituality is? Recognize your relationship to your innermost being, and then recognize the relationship between the innermost being and your divine mother. We discussed that in the article on shepherding, in the article on the innermost master, the first article we shared just a moment ago. But now this article focuses on our divine mother specifically. And one of the things that we focus on is this wonderful word, resplendence. Oh, sorry, resplendence. No, serendipity. Serendipity. And the nature of serendipity. Serendipity in our lives is arranged and organized for us by our divine mother. The reason why we got mixed up and we said resplendence is that we were the example that we use in this article is the Bounty, the mutiny on the Bounty, in fact. And the mutineers end up going to Sri Lanka, one of the islands among the islands of Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka translated means islands of resplendence, or resplendent island. And what you may not be aware of is that Mutiny on the Bounty, even though it was a popular 19th century novel, it was the novelization, it was turned into many, many movies over the years. It's based on real life events. The Mutiny on the Bounty was a real event which took place. And what's incredible to consider is that, so this is a painting that's by Robert Dodd, is 1790, that is depicting the Mutiny on the Bounty taking place. So this is actually a historical event that the novel was based on. Now, what's incredible then is to realize when we use the consciousness to penetrate into the names of the characters and the setting and the ship and the ship's mission, what you realize is that all of these names sound made up. It sounds like a poet made up these names. Because, for example, Captain William Bligh is William B. Bligh. William B. Bligh means the laws of men belie, because bill is what a law is, right? You introduce a bill in Congress, that becomes a law. So the laws of men belie. And then he's the captain that the crew does the mutiny against. And then Christian Fletcher is the leader of the mutiny. And Christian Fletcher means one who follows Christ puts flights on arrows. In other words, divine law gives flight. So the captain means the Captain William Bligh is the laws of men belie, and Christian Fletcher, the leader of the mutiny, is divine law gives flight. So you have the laws of men which lie and the divine law which gives flight. And guess what? These are the actual names of the real men involved in this story from history. Who but the Divine Mother Nature, who is the body of the universe, who is the foundation of all reality, the sexual force, the sexual energy, the ninth sphere on the tree of life, electricity, prana, chi, That's the Divine Mother Kundalini. Who else but she could have arranged such a perfect serendipitous event? And then, not only that, the ship is called the Bounty. Who is more bountiful than the Divine Mother Nature? And not just that, but they're on a mission for breadfruit. The manna, breadfruit, manna, which falls from heaven, because these breadfruit are in these big trees and it falls from like coconuts. So breadfruit is the manna from heaven. That's the bounty that this ship is going off to Sri Lanka, the resplendent island, the Garden of Eden, the fourth dimension, Nirvana, an island of resplendence. And it's like a poet, a dramatist, a writer could not have dreamt up these beautiful and powerful images and symbols. And there they are in a real life story, in a real life event of history. These actual men born with these names, going to these islands, going on a ship that was named by, and who else but the Divine Mother could have arranged all that? And then the powerful message and the powerful story which gets delivered through this event in history. It's not by accident. It's one of the most beloved stories of the last 200 years. And it's been made into films countless times. This one, The Bounty, with Anthony Hopkins and Mel Gibson. But before this was Marlon Brando. And before that was so many times Hollywood has adapted this story onto film. In any case, we're nearing the end. The point that we want to bring everyone back to is then the reason why this channel and our live streams, we don't expect to be popular. We don't need them to be popular. We don't want thousands of followers and, God only knows. We're not here to make money. We're not here to we're here to speak the truth. And we know that the truth is disruptive to the way people currently live, their beliefs, their rationalizations, their identification with the vase, the vessel. And the truth is spirituality rests with the rose which needs to bloom and longs to bloom within the vessel. The vessel, the vase, has no future in the supernal worlds. Start getting used to that idea. Start getting used to practicing radical humility. Start letting go of the idea that you are important, that you are special, that you are spiritual, and start adopting an attitude where you are a servant and you are serving others and you are serving your innermost intimate Christ. Read the article on the shepherd and the sheepdog. Read the article on the Divine Mother. The links are in the chat. And well, we got an error message on from Facebook regarding the heard or not to heard article. Go to atlas.info and you will find these articles. If you need the link, contact us directly. You can chat us directly on Facebook anytime. Real spirituality is within you, and it's there for you to discover without any drugs, without any influence, without any devices or of any kind. Just you, yourself, your innermost, your divine mother, quiet, meditation, relax. We're here to help you. Here's a nice final thought that Eric has shared. I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was human. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die human, to soar with angels blessed above. And when I sacrifice my angel soul, I shall become what no mind ever conceived. As a human, I will die once more. Reborn, I will with the angels soar. And when I let my angel body go, I shall be more than mortal men can know. It's a beautiful sentiment. There's no guarantee of that. But that's a whole other live stream. And perhaps, Eric, you just gave us the inspiration for our next live stream, and that it seems like we may as well cover that topic of death and what happens to us after we die. Because rest assured, not everyone who dies is going to be reborn an angel. It's not how that works. Right? That seed that fell from the oak tree, many, 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 many seeds fall from the oak tree. Very, very, very few acorns become oak trees. But that topic of death and rebirth, that will have to wait for next time. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you found this useful, and we hope you will share it, pass it forward, pay it forward, spread the word that, if you are watching on YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe, click like on the video if you think this might be valuable for others to hear. And then we will see you all next time. So good night. God bless. Thanks again. And we'll see you. Well, our next broadcast will be Friday. So hopefully we'll see you then. Good night, everyone.